calling all tennis diehards from the passionate supporters in the Philippines to the roaring crowds in Doha, and everyone streaming from every corner of the map. You need to stop what you are doing immediately. We have a seismic development breaking out of the Middle East right this second. A news story so massive, it is sending absolute shockwaves through the very foundation of the WTA Tour. The Qatar Total Energies Open is mere moments away from the first ball toss, but you can go ahead and scrap the headline you thought was coming. This is not just about the return of the world number one. We are looking way past the narrative surrounding the newly crowned Australian Open champion. No. The development that has the internet absolutely melting down is a completely different beast. This is the curveball that has tournament officials in Doha frantically revising the order of play and fans back in Manila, sitting on the edge of their seats because we are barreling toward a monumental collision. The scenario unfolding right now reads like a high-stakes Hollywood screenplay, with Alexandra Eala, Iga Swiatek, and Elena Rybakina all set to converge on the exact same battleground. If the whispers circulating around the official draw ceremony turn out to be accurate, you had better brace yourselves because we are staring down the barrel of the most explosive and high-stakes week of Alexandra Eala's career. We can finally put the speculation to bed and confirm the reports Alexandra Eala has secured her spot in the main draw, meaning she gets to completely skip the brutal gauntlet of the qualifying rounds. These potential matchups are the stuff of nightmares for her rivals, but absolute dream scenarios for the fans, generating a buzz in the Qatar air that is downright electric right now. Welcome to your definitive all-access breakdown, where we refuse to just scratch the surface of today's headlines and instead dive headfirst into the massive implications. We are charting the real-time destiny of Asian tennis and deconstructing the tactical minefield that lies in wait for Eala on the punishing hard courts of Doha. We are putting Iga Swiatek's thirst for payback under the microscope and analyzing the impenetrable dominance of the Iron Fortress, known as Elena Rybakina. But before we go any further, we have to set the stage because you cannot truly appreciate the gravity of Doha without revisiting the absolute war Eala survived in Abu Dhabi less than 48 hours ago. Eala was locked in a ferocious dogfight, and that specific clash with Alexandra Sasnovich is crucial because it exposed the true grit and character of the player touching down in Qatar today. She was dead in the water, down a set, and trailing 0-4 in the decider, and let me double underline that precarious position for anyone just joining the sport. At this elite tier of professional play, clawing your way back from a 0-4 deficit in the third set against a battle-tested veteran like Sasnovich is a statistical miracle bordering on the impossible. That scoreline is typically a guaranteed death sentence. The stadium had gone library quiet, and the pundits were already typing up her elimination notice for the morning papers. Then something clicked, and we witnessed that signature resilience, that absolute refusal to fold that is rapidly becoming the defining trademark of the Eala brand. She did not just break back. She dug herself out of a 6-foot hole, fended off multiple match points, forced the tiebreaker, and snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. That triumph was not merely another tick in the win column on the scoresheet. It was a deafening declaration of intent to the rest of the tour. It was a warning shot fired across the Persian Gulf directly to Doha, screaming, "I am not just here to play, I am here to conquer," even though she eventually bowed out in the quarterfinals to the powerhouse Ekaterina Alexandrova. There is absolutely zero shame in that defeat, considering Alexandrova acts like a relentless force of nature on these fast, hard courts. In hindsight, that loss might have been a strategic blessing in disguise, providing Eala the exact time window she needed to hop on a flight and touch down in Doha without delay. Here is where the breaking news takes a massive pivot, because the original itinerary was simple but grueling. She was supposed to fight her way through the qualifying rounds. Despite sitting at a career-best ranking of 45, a historic milestone we will discuss in a moment, she was scheduled for a weekend of pure exhaustion in the qualifiers. She was expected to battle tooth and nail just to punch her ticket to the main stage, but the tennis gods clearly had a different script written for her this week. We received official confirmation just hours ago that Veronika Kudermetova has formally withdrawn from the Qatar Open. Why is this critical? Because that withdrawal blew a wide hole in the main draw. And when you look at the alternate list, guess who was sitting right at the very top? The first player in line to snatch that golden opportunity was none other than the Philippine tennis sensation herself, Alexandra Eala. There are no qualifying matches to grind through, no fatigue from three-setters before the main event. She steps onto the big stage with fresh legs and the swagger of the world number 45. However, stepping directly into the main draw of a prestigious WTA 1000 event like Qatar is a dangerous double-edged sword to wield. You are thrown into the deep end instantly to swim with the sharks, and there are absolutely no warm-up matches to help you find your rhythm out there. Just take a quick look at the apex predators circling the waters in this specific tournament. You have the top seed Iga Swiatek, the Queen of Clay, and three-time Doha champion, who ruled this venue with an iron grip from 2022 through 2024. Then you have the second seed, Elena Rybakina, the Ice Queen herself, fresh off hoisting the trophy in Melbourne at the Australian Open, and arguably the most dangerous player on the planet right now. The shockwaves reverberating through all of Qatar are not just clickbait or manufactured hype. This is a genuine visceral reaction to the draw. It is the mix of thrill and terror that Eala, the giant slayer who stunned Swiatek in Miami last year, might face her again, or worse, have to run the gauntlet against Rybakina's power. For the next hour, I am going to walk you through exactly why this specific tournament is the definitive pivot point for Eala's entire 2027 campaign. We are going to dissect the advanced metrics behind her skyrocketing ranking and break down the specific tactical adjustments she has made. Furthermore, we will run a point-by-point simulation to see exactly how she stacks up against titans of the sport like Swiatek and Rybakina. Let's hit the pause button and appreciate the raw data, because the numbers do not lie. Alexandra Eala has officially breached the top 45 in the world. Do you realize the sheer historical weight of this moment? We are talking about the highest watermark ever achieved by a Filipino player in the entire history of the WTA. She is shattering records on a weekly basis. Remember that at the start of 2026, she was barely hovering on the outside of the top 100 looking in. The naysayers claimed she lacked the physical stature, argued her serve was too soft for the modern power era, and labeled her a junior prodigy destined to flame out. Fast forward to February 2027, and she holds a WTA 125 title and is striking absolute fear into the elite locker room. Alex Eala arrives in Doha, riding the crest of a massive wave after her sensational semi-final run during that dreamlike campaign in Miami. That breakout performance didn't just turn heads. It punched her ticket directly into the main draw here in Qatar. But what is truly sending shockwaves through the tennis community isn't merely her raw skill. It is the violent velocity with which she has skyrocketed up the world rankings. The cat is officially out of the bag, and the whispers in the locker room have transformed from casual curiosity to genuine alarm among the elite. Iga Swiatek knows exactly how dangerous this challenger has become. Even Elena Rybakina, fresh off lifting the trophy at the Australian Open, is watching her rearview mirror with a wary eye. When Eala walks into the players' lounge at the Khalifa International Tennis Complex today, the energy in the room is going to shift perceptibly. Necks are going to snap in her direction. She has completely shed the skin of being just that promising junior from the Rafa Nadal Academy. She has metamorphosed into a legitimate threat to the old guard. Why are the top seeds suddenly losing sleep? Because she wields that lefty forehand like a laser-guided missile and possesses a warrior spirit that absolutely refuses to break under pressure. The proof was painted all over the hard courts in Abu Dhabi. Her timing is exquisite, stepping in to take the ball early, absorbing the heaviest pace on tour, and using that southpaw spin to carve out geometric angles that leave opponents stranded and staring. But the most terrifying upgrade she has unveiled in 2026 is her ironclad physical durability. You do not claw your way back from a 0-4 deficit in a deciding third set without possessing the lung capacity of a marathon runner and world-class conditioning. That specific brand of comeback requires a level of psychological armor that usually takes seasoned veterans a decade to construct. Yet here stands Eala, displaying that seasoned mental fortitude while she is still barely out of her teenage years at 20. However, the gauntlet awaiting her in Doha is an entirely different species of challenge. The courts in Qatar are infamous for being slow, gritty grinders, where the ball bites into the sandpaper-like surface and kicks up aggressively high. On top of the surface, you have to battle the chaotic wind that swirls unpredictably inside the stadium. Historically, these heavy, sluggish conditions are custom-built for exactly one dominant force, Iga Swiatek. That brings us squarely to the headline story of the day. We need to discuss the elephant in the room, or more accurately, the Polish juggernaut blocking the doorway to the title. We are talking about the queen of the desert, Iga Swiatek. If you look at the archives, the Qatar Open isn't merely a tournament stop for her. It is effectively her own personal backyard playground. Just glance at the hardware she has collected. She ruled supreme. Here in 2022, successfully defended her crown in 2023 and completed the historic three-peat in 2024. This surface was practically engineered in a lab to maximize her heavy topspin and lasso forehand. However, she touches down in Doha this week nursing some wounds, not physical ones, but deep psychological bruises. She crashed out early at the Australian Open, and that iron-fisted grip she once held on the world #1 ranking has loosened as the hungry pack of wolves finally caught up to her. And undoubtedly haunting the subconscious of the Polish superstar is the ghost of Miami 2026. Do you remember that collision? That was the watershed moment that completely altered the career trajectory for Alexandra Eala. It remains the biggest upset of the season to date. Eala didn't just scrape by a win. She dismantled Swiatek in straight sets with clinical precision. There were no excuses, no net cords going her way, and no medical timeouts to break the rhythm. It was a tactical masterclass where she thoroughly outmaneuvered the favorite. She rushed Swiatek on the forehand side, punished every single second serve, and physically matched the best mover on tour step for blistering step. Now, just imagine the absolute bedlam in Doha if the draw gods decide to be mischievous and set up a rematch as early as the second round. To say the atmosphere in Qatar would be electric is a massive understatement. For Swiatek, it represents a nightmare scenario. Eala is a complex puzzle to solve specifically because of that southpaw advantage. The data shows that Swiatek can get visibly uncomfortable against crafty left-handers who know how to jam her into the body and neutralize her backhand cross-court execution. Eala operates with zero fear, an audacious attitude that Swiatek sometimes struggles to extinguish when the momentum starts swinging away from her. If they do collide in the desert, here is the tactical blueprint. Swiatek will attempt to impose her will and turn the match into a physical war of attrition. She will leverage the heavy Doha conditions to push Eala deep into the back fencing and grind her down point by point. Eala's counterattack must mirror her heroic performance in Miami. She needs to hold her ground on the baseline step inside the court and strike the ball on the rise. She simply cannot afford to let Iga reset the rally and dictate terms. The real story here is the seismic shift in perception. For the first time in years, analysts are looking at a potential Swiatek versus Eala matchup and thinking, you know what? This is not a done deal. This kid actually has a legitimate shot at taking the whole thing. But hold your horses because there is another titan lurking in this draw, the Ice Queen, Elena Rybakina. If Swiatek reigns supreme on the slower clay-like surfaces, Rybakina is the undisputed ruler of first-strike tennis. Fresh off her Grand Slam triumph at the Australian Open, she is playing like a force of nature. Her confidence is currently orbiting somewhere in the stratosphere, and her service game is without question the single most devastating weapon in women's sports at this very moment. There is a reason Rybakina is headlining this update alongside the others. Eala has simply never encountered raw kinetic power like this on a major stage against a version of Rybakina playing at this absolute peak. A potential meeting between them would be the ultimate clash of philosophies. It is a classic David versus Goliath narrative, the crafty lefty spinner versus the overwhelming power server. The spectacle for the fans packing the stands in Qatar will be watching to see if Eala can solve the impossible puzzle of returning the Rybakina delivery. Let's be brutally honest here. If Rybakina is landing 70% of her first serves, Eala is going to be in deep trouble. In fact, any player on the planet would be helpless against those numbers. However, if Rybakina has an off night, or if that notorious Doha win starts messing with her high ball toss, the door cracks open. Eala has proven herself to be one of the premier return specialists among the next-generation stars. She utilizes a compact, abbreviated swing to block the ball back deep into the court. If she can force Rybakina to move her feet and jam the ball at her shoelaces, we suddenly have a competitive fight on our hands. Remember that Rybakina is tall and generally dislikes digging out low-skidding balls. Eala's lefty forehand cross-court shot naturally dips viciously and stays low to the ground. If she executes that pattern perfectly, it creates a tactical nightmare for a player of Rybakina's towering stature. The mere fact that we are seriously analyzing Eala as a credible threat to the reigning Australian Open champion is a testament to just how far her game has progressed in 12 short months. Now let's break down the tournament logistics. As a WTA 1000 event, we are looking at a 56-player draw where the top 8 seeds receive a golden ticket, a first-round bye. That means heavy hitters like Swiatek, Rybakina, Gauff, and the defending champion Anisimova will sit out the opening round to rest. However, Eala enters the fray unseeded and unprotected. This puts her squarely in the danger zone. Being unseeded means there is no safety net. She could face absolutely anyone in the opening round, from a scrappy qualifier to a major champion. She could find herself staring down another teenage prodigy like Mira Andreeva, or she could be drawn to face a top 10 titan who missed out on a top 8 seeding immediately in round 2. The blockbuster scenario that everyone is either dreading or praying for is seeing Eala land squarely in Swiatek's quarter of the bracket. Just visualize this potential gauntlet of death. Round 1. Eala versus a gritty veteran grinder like Mertens or Fernandez. Round 2. She faces the 9th seed Ekaterina Alexandrova in a high-stakes rematch. Then in round 3, a showdown with Iga Swiatek herself. That is the definition of a group of death. But Eala has already proven that she thrives when the odds are stacked impossibly high against her. Back in Miami, she took down Ostapenko Keys and Swiatek back-to-back-to-back. She does not care about the reputation or the ranking next to the names on the scoreboard. Finally, consider the narrative regarding the Middle East swing itself. Eala has been acclimatizing in the region for weeks, giving her a distinct edge in preparation over those just arriving from Europe. She has already completely acclimatized to the blistering temperatures of the desert and is synced perfectly with the local clock. A massive advantage over her rivals arriving from Europe or the States, who are likely still fighting off the heavy fog of jet lag. While heavyweights like Elena Rybakina and Iga Swiatek have not played a single competitive point since the major in Melbourne, potentially leaving them covered in competitive rust, Eala enters with zero doubt, having already battled through 5 exhausting matches in Abu Dhabi just this week. Her physical conditioning is impeccable, and her timing is sharp, but the headline story we need to investigate is the impenetrable mental fortress currently being built within the mind of Alexandra Eala. Did you hear her comments after that massive win against Sasnovich? She made it crystal clear, stating, "I really try to find the fight," proving to everyone that she refuses to hit the panic button, even when the odds are stacked against. Here, you can practically witness the Rafa Nadal Academy DNA pumping through her system. It is well documented that she trained alongside the icon himself and was raised on that legendary never-surrender mentality. However, what we are seeing now is a distinct evolution, where she channels that fighting spirit in her own specific way. She may not unleash the primal roars Nadal is famous for, but the competitive fire burns just as hot. Her on-court demeanor is different, but the tactical mind is a carbon copy. Even when staring at a daunting 0-4 deficit against giants like Swiatek or Rybakina, she is methodically deconstructing the match 1 point at a time here in Doha. There will be moments when the scoreboard looks absolutely grim. She will inevitably drop service games, and she is guaranteed to face down multiple set points threatening to end her run. The nightmare scenario for any player across the net is that Eala simply refuses to fade away. Smash a winner past her, and she instantly resets fire and ace. And she steps closer to the line, daring you to execute perfection once again. That specific variety of mental steel is precisely what has sent tremors through the tour. A field currently full of spectacular ball strikers who sadly tend to collapse like a house of cards when the pressure reaches its peak. Eala stands as the total opposite of that glass jaw fragility, a genuine grinder who absolutely thrives in the mud, particularly on the slower, gritty surfaces of Doha, where rallies often turn into lung-busting marathons. Her most dangerous weapon is undoubtedly her mental cardio, a level of psychological stamina that compels her opponents to hit just one extra ball when their legs are already screaming for mercy. She will force a power player like Rybakina to execute 4 difficult volleys just to put a single point on the board. And we must not ignore the massive wildcard factor. The gigantic Filipino expatriate community living right here to the region. The moment Eala steps onto the hard court in Doha, you can forget about the concept of a neutral venue. It effectively morphs into a home game mirroring the incredible scenes we just observed in Abu Dhabi. The stands were absolutely packed to the rafters, with Filipino supporters generating deafening noise, exploding after every single rally. So try to calculate the psychological burden of facing that atmosphere, even as the #1 player in the world. Suddenly, the entire arena is chanting, "Eala, Eala, Eala," in perfect rhythm, generating a raw, visceral energy that swings momentum and is known to visibly shake even the most seasoned tour veterans. Iga Swiatek is used to being the crowd favorite wherever she travels, but battling Eala in the Middle East creates a unique anomaly where the Polish superstar might suddenly feel like the antagonist of the narrative. When we discuss the shock factor of this tournament, we are talking about this electric environment, a reality the Qatar organizers fully understand because they know Eala is a box office attraction who moves serious ticket numbers. Placing her on center court ensures a high-voltage setting which dumps massive pressure on the heavy favorites, while Eala seems to feed off that electricity and become even more dangerous. She has stated time and time again that she competes for her flag, so if she walks out to battle Rybakina, with 5,000 compatriots screaming their lungs out, the entire competitive dynamic changes in a heartbeat. You might witness Rybakina's serve velocity drop a few miles per hour as the tension ratchets up, setting off the upset alert sirens as the whole world watches to see what unfolds. The official bracket is out, the collision course has been charted, and here is my fearless prediction for the Qatar Open in the year 2026. I am going on the record right now to state that Alexandra Eala secures a definitive victory in her opening round. Her momentum from Abu Dhabi is simply too overwhelming and her game too dialed in, but then she encounters a seeded titan. If that adversary happens to be Swiatek, I am calling it a straight coin flip, a 50-50 split, because while Iga is the favorite on paper, the sluggish court speeds the hostile crowd history and the fearlessness of the underdog level the playing field completely. If she ends up drawing Rybakina, the mountain becomes significantly steeper because Elena's current form is absolutely dominant and incredibly difficult to break down. Nonetheless, I predict Eala snatches at least one set, but the real headline is that regardless of whether she hoists the trophy or bows out in round 2, Alexandra Eala has officially announced her arrival on the main stage. She has successfully graduated from the next-gen speculation and is now firmly cemented in the right now, commanding genuine respect from every player in the locker room. The mere fact that we are sitting here seriously calculating her statistical probability against the world number 1 and 2 without a hint of irony proves exactly how far she has climbed. The shock isn't that she is sharing the court with them. The actual shock is the very legitimate possibility that she could tear them apart, so the stage is flawlessly set in Doha and the gladiators are prepared for combat. The draw has presented us with the potential for the most dramatic week in the history of tennis, not just for the nation of the Philippines, but for the entire Asian continent, watching closely. Alexandra Eala has officially punched her ticket to the main draw, while Iga Swiatek is lurking in the shadows, starving for revenge and looking to settle old scores. Elena Rybakina is waiting in the wings to re-establish her dominance, and we are merely days away from finding out who blinks first in what is guaranteed to be a brutal war of attrition. This is going to be an absolute battle of nerves. And honestly, I have not felt this level of hype for the opening rounds of a WTA 1000 event in years, so you need to make sure you are locked in. Double check that your notifications are switched on immediately, because the second that first ball is struck, or the first major upset shakes the bracket, we will be right back here to break down every single angle. Will Eala deliver another earth-shattering shockwave to the sporting world, or will the queens of the WTA successfully defend their crowns? The desert is calling, Qatar is ready. Let the games begin.